and welcome to another episode. Well, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking to you about this camera right here. Now, it's clearly an Argus C-4. The Argus C-4 was a series of cameras that was introduced by Argus in the early 1950s. I've dated this particular example to 1956, and the Argus C-4 production run ended, I believe, in 1957, so this was towards the end of the run. Now, what makes this camera a little unusual and perhaps a little special, some of the more eagle-eyed viewers may have already noticed, this C-4 includes a little lever right here next to the lens. And what that lever tells you is that this is actually a Geiss-modified Argus C-4. Now, Geiss-America was a camera seller, I believe, based in Chicago, and when the C-4 was first introduced in the early 1950s, the one complaint was that the lens on the original C-4 was a fixed lens, so you could not interchange with other lenses. So Geiss saw an opportunity, and they started modifying Argus C-4s to allow the lenses to be interchangeable. So this lever here, which is not present on a standard C-4, allows you to release the lens and then install other lenses. So it's an interchangeable lens camera. Now, this modification was so well received even by Argus themselves that you could buy a Geiss-modified Argus directly from Argus dealers. Now, these cameras are fairly rare today, which makes this one a little bit unusual. I do have the camera itself and also have two additional lenses to use with it. So I've got this 35mm lens, f4.5, and also this 100mm lens, also f4.5. These lenses were made by Enna in Germany and imported, obviously, by Geiss with the Geiss-modified mounting system so they could mount directly to the Argus C-4 Geiss-modified camera. Now, just to make it a little more interesting, I've decided that I'll be shooting a roll of infrared film through the camera. So I've got this roll of Rollei Infrared film in 35mm. I'll be shooting that with an infrared filter during daylight conditions. I also have several boxes of infrared flashbulbs, so I plan on shooting a few infrared flashbulbs at night as well. So we'll see if this works, and I'm very excited to see the results. Okay, we're going to load the Argus C-4. Now, the Argus C-4 is notoriously fiddly to load, so we will see how this goes. I am loading it with Rollei Infrared, as I mentioned. The great thing about Rollei Infrared is it doesn't require any special handling like most other infrared films do. So I'm able to load it here in just regular low light. So with the C-4, the entire back comes off. Set that aside. Now, the C-4 does not have a rewind release per se. What you do is pull up on the wind knob and then turn it a quarter turn counterclockwise, and that locks it open so that the winding spool can freely rotate. So what I want to do is rotate this into position to where the loading wire is. And according to the Argus instructions, you feed the film underneath this feed wire and then pull through, it says in the instructions, exactly 3 notches. And then fold that back. Now at this point, I'm going to drop the wind back into its normal position and start winding. Okay, this is where the fiddly part starts. Now, after it stops, it says release the shutter once, continue winding, Okay, now that you've got it wound back on itself one time, I'm going to wind this taut. That looks good. Replace the back, which locks down below. Okay. Now I'm going to wind it one more time, watching the rewind knob just to ensure that it's moving, that it's rotating. Get a little tension on it to make it more obvious. Once. Now we have to manually set the film counter. This camera counts down. So you set the number of exposures that you have in the film canister. In this case it's a 36, which you set the dial at 0, so that makes sense. But as I'm taking pictures, this dial is going to actually count down instead of forward. There we have it, ready to go. Now I did want to talk a little bit about the infrared flash bulbs that I'll be using as well. I've got a few packs of these. These are very difficult to find, and I feel like I've been lucky to find a couple packages. These 5Rs. 5R are infrared, and as you can see, if I pull one of these out, they look completely black to the naked eye. They look the same size as a number 5 flash bulb would look, but rather than being clear or blue, they appear to be completely black. Now if you hold this up to a strong light, you'll see that it's coated with a deep red coating, as you might suspect, for infrared. Basically like an infrared filter built into the bulb. I'll be shooting the flash bulbs with this Argus branded flash. This is such a nice flash that I want to use it with the C-4. It's similar to a Tiltamite, a Honeywell Tiltamite. The big difference between this and the Honeywell is this is actually a hot shoe type flash, so it can be triggered with a hot shoe. And if we look at the C-4, we can see that it does actually have a hot shoe for hot shoe flash on top of the camera. What else is interesting on this is there's a switch right on the back of the camera to switch between M synchronization and X synchronization. Very simple. So X synchronization, of course, is for electronic flash and F-class flash bulbs. M synchronization is for M-class flash bulbs or medium speed flash bulbs. This is all your standard flash bulbs, so number 5 in this case will be what I'm using there. Now there's one last thing I want to talk about and demonstrate, and that is how the lenses are changed. So the Geiss modification includes this lever here. To change the lens, this little dial first rotates like that, so that the gap in the dial allows you to move the lever up. Before I do that though, I'm going to make sure that it's focused to infinity. So move the lever up just to there, and then lift the lens straight off. Quite simple. And I'm going to be shooting with the 35mm lens. So to get the lens ready to go, first make sure the lens is focused at infinity. Simply turn the rear ring until the infinity mark lines up. Then the trick here is to find this little red dot right there on the lens mount, and keeping the rangefinder setting focused right at infinity, we're going to line up that little red dot with the focus indicator. It's a little bit tricky, but not impossible. So there's the lens is on. Now, once it's in position, just lower the lever back down, and then twist the knob to lock the lever in place, and you've successfully changed lenses. Now the rangefinder should work as you change focus on the lens, and pretty straightforward. Okay, I've got everything set up to do a little test to see if we can see the infrared flashbulb go off. So I've actually got 4 cameras set up right now. I've got the Argus C-4, the subject camera, set up here with the Argus flash unit and the infrared bulb, which I've just installed. I've got my main video camera that's capturing all the action here. And then over here on this tripod, I've got 2 cameras. I've got an Olympus EM1 original model that's been converted to full spectrum. So that should be able to capture the infrared, hopefully. And then right next to it, I've got my normal vlogging camera, which will be capturing, of course, visible spectrum. So the idea is I'm going to fire off the flash. It's not totally dark out right now, but I wanted there to be enough light to actually video this demonstration. So I'll be taking a photo of this rhododendron bush right here with flowers that are just coming out. Not the most exciting subject, but I've got the camera set up so that there's one flower in particular that's exactly 5 feet from the camera, which I think is about the distance that this flash will be effective at. And then, of course, the lens itself on the Argus C4 does not have an infrared indicator for adjusting the focus. So I'm just guessing about where that should be. So hopefully I've come pretty close, but we'll see. So I've just checked the flash bulb for continuity. The film is wound on. And one last check of framing, and we'll fire. Okay, I couldn't actually see anything, but just maybe the faintest red glow, very faint, but I heard the sizzle and pop, so I know that the flash bulb went off, and hopefully that was captured on the infrared camera, but we'll check it out. And there you have it. I heard the sizzle, so I know it fired off, even though I couldn't really see any flash from here. Hopefully the infrared camera picked that up. So here we can see in a frame-by-frame comparison that there is a little splash of red in the visible spectrum, but compared to the amount of light that's coming through in the infrared spectrum, obviously there's no comparison. So it does show that there is quite a bit of infrared light here as a flash. Now for the camera itself, yeah, it's a fun camera to shoot with. It's really solid. The controls all work really well. And with the ability to change lenses, this makes it quite a versatile camera. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at the Geiss-modified Argus C4. If you've made it with me this far, thank you for watching all the way through, and I will see you next time.